Last week, the 116th session of Congress began. We're going to have it for 2 years, like all the other sessions. And a lot of people that are progressive who have found themselves disenfranchised with the Democrats were happy because we had multiple Justice Democrats who won their primary and subsequent general elections sworn in. We thought, oh, we're finally going to see a difference in the vote, and we were obviously dissuaded when Barbara Lee didn't run for speaker and also lost the position of caucus chair, and it was won by a person who literally, during the last presidential election cycle, went on television and tried to purport the conspiracy theory that Senator Sanders was bought out by the NRA. So, that was all disillusioning prior to everything commencing. But there was a new rule that came into effect, and it was called Paygo. And I actually have an article here by The Week where I'm going to quote them. And they say it sounds like this: a rule that Congress must pay for its budget decisions as it makes them, rather than pass legislation that increases deficit spending on net. And this was, presented by Pelosi and other corporate Democrats. And it was notably opposed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ro Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard, people that the progressives have a high opinion of, or are generally fans of or like for the most part. And in spite of this, again, with multiple Democrats being in office that are part of the justice branding, so people like Ayanna Pressley and Rashida Tlaib, who made headlines earlier this week by talking about she was going to impeach Trump and calling him, with profanity. But the rest of these elected Justice Democrats, with the exception of Ocasio-Cortez, seemingly just disappeared on this issue. Their opposition was nowhere to be seen. And it was really interesting because for the last year and a half, ever since that group's been around, I've watched a number of its members be critical, or people that support the group condemn individuals like Jimmy Dore for saying that it is effectively trying to repair a party that's too far gone, referring to the Democrats. And I'll never forget, he played this video of Ayanna Pressley from 2 years ago, where she was talking about how Hillary was progressive and was, talking about sexism and all this other stuff. But it was almost a complete 360 in terms of, aligning yourself with the corporate side of the party. And now the progressive side 2 years later, it was like two different people, where they were both had the same face and name, but one now is presenting herself as someone that's completely different. And, it's that kind of those early warning signs of how these people acted just a few short years ago, when they thought, the party can't go any way other than to just back the corporatist, that I realized what he was, that clip was significant in showing that we're really surrounded by a bunch of people who aren't serious about their ideology, and have used this insurgent group to make themselves, achieve a higher position than they probably would if they had done it by themselves. You cannot be in favor of ideas like Medicare for all or free college, know anything about them, and then think of Paygo as being so insignificant that not only do you not vote against it, you even vote for it. Those are two philosophies that don't go together. And the reason I say this exposes Pelosi, even though she's already been exposed as a conservative, neoliberal, is that when she gave her midterm speech, she said that the Democrats are going to strive for I think it was unity or bipartisanship or something to that effect. And evidently this was meant toward the Republicans, who would have always favored a balanced budget amendment. And yet somehow we have people who to this day are still confused as to why individuals like myself would have a problem with her, still playing a position of power, because she will use that power to go against the actual voters, the will of the people, and preserve the status quo, no matter how awful it is. And sometimes they do it in ways we don't expect. I wasn't thinking of Paygo 3, 4, 5 months ago, but I didn't think that the Democrats, especially with more members who are calling themselves progressive, there to vote against whatever neoliberal austerity type idea they had in place, would be so bold as to do something like that. And it's really, I oftentimes say that people who are disillusioned with politics should still try to see what's going on, or keep up some regular activity in relation to it. Because I think people who, if you sat down and explained to them why this was a bad idea, why this was horrible, would say, "Oh man, that was a awful. Why would they do this?" But when you don't tell them and you just go, "Oh, here's Paygo and this is bad," they don't know what you're talking about, because they don't. But it's also due to their own refusal to hear out, hey, just because these two people are on the same side doesn't really mean that they're all good. I've spoken on this channel before about my admiration for Ro Khanna, who, I have to explain this repeatedly. It's not the practice of being the only person who votes against something or pushes for a position that is so awe-inspiring. It's the fact that when people are in a chamber or body of their peers, they have individuals who push back against them for doing things that are not part of the status quo. So, you might say to yourself, just a guy in a suit who opposed one little possibly game changing law. What's the big deal? Well, that person is going to have members of the party, particularly other House members, who are going to say, why would you vote against that? What are you doing? That's crazy. They get pressure put on them to not take a stand that is counteractive to what a majority of the members are feeling, which is why I don't like the two-party system, and I think that tribalism is the cancer killing America. I've credited Republicans like Mike Lee and Rand Paul multiple times in the past, because they're two of the few members of that party that I've seen who are always able to ignore or otherwise not care enough to switch their position, because some people within are upset at them for actually sticking to their principles. And that's been more prominent in foreign policy than domestic issues. But you get the idea that it's not something that they take lightly. That's why they stay consistent with their opposition and support of certain ideas. So I'm already thinking that most of the members that were sworn in are full of crap. I'm also going to speculate that you're going to see some of those different members try to put up something progressive. And, the point I've tried to make is, even if it doesn't get passed in the Senate, which it won't because the Republicans control it, the whole idea of getting it passed in the House is to show that there are enough members of Congress who think this is a good idea, and then go to the American people during the 2020 elections. So, outside the presidential election, you have the congressional elections. Some people might not know that, but you would go and then say, hey, we tried to give you single payer, so you don't have to pay any more for your health care while your taxes go up. But you save money in the long run. And you would be able to say, we tried to do this, the Republicans killed it. You can't even make that argument because your own party is shooting you in the foot before you can even introduce a bill on their first day in power. I mean, it's astonishing how when I talk about my disillusion with these parties, it's because I expect the Republicans to go out of their way to try and do things that are against whatever domestic ideas I might have. It's a given. What I don't expect is for the Democrats, who tried to position themselves as the party of the common man and the working guy, to go around and within hours of taking back power, oh, here's a new policy that says you can't put up any law that makes the budget not any more balanced than it already is. They sure were quiet when they helped Trump get that 717 billion military budget. I didn't see anyone complaining about how that was going to be paid for. Again, the Mick resistance it seems, is more effective when it comes to killing the ideas and positions of people on their own side. And this kind of attitude I've seen reflected on places like Twitter, where I actually read a couple of butthurt Hillary supporters, and they were saying that Bernie should run for the Republican nomination because he had helped Trump get elected, even though he went out and supported her and endorsed her and told people not to vote for third party candidates. But that's besides the point. Reality doesn't matter to them. And it was that kind of thinking where they can't figure out that you are your own problem. If we don't get, whether it's single payer, whether it's free college, whether it's the wars ending, it's going to be the Democrats' fault. It doesn't matter if every single Republican votes against it. If one Democrat votes against this stuff, it's problematic. We saw late last year when they had the resolution to get out of Yemen, where we've killed 85,000 children at the age of 5 with our missiles and starving them to death with Saudi Arabia. You had 5 Democrats who voted against that. They get no punishment from Pelosi. They don't have her saying, "Hey, what the hell? How can you keep this unconstitutional, savage, what has been called by the UN the worst humanitarian crisis in modern history going?" And they completely get away with it scot-free. But these are the kind of things where I see this happening, where you have these lawmakers who are supposed to be the good guys, according to the Democrats, the ones that we're supposed to root for and think are here to help us, and they stab us in the back. They do exactly what the Republicans would do, but then they get surprised when you're more upset with them than the Republicans. And that's because we expect them to do everything wrong. Hell, you even had Republicans who voted for that bill. So, this idea that they couldn't have flipped over or any of that is not true. Um, I'd recommend anyone who believes in the idea that you're never going to get a whole caucus, so all the Republicans or Democrats in one chamber to vote all the same way, to go look at Obamacare. Guess how many Republicans voted for that? 0. Look at the Kavanaugh thing. Guess how many Republicans voted against him? 1. And she didn't even vote against him. She just voted president. So they have always been able, in the last at least 10 years, with McConnell at the helm in the Senate, and to an extent with Ryan, but not as much, show more unity than the Democrats. And it's always cost the Democrats and hurt them, and also screwed with the people as well. It's a sad sight to see, because when I look at things like the Yemen vote, where you had the 5 Democrats vote against it, or the AT&T Verizon thing, I believe that was with net neutrality, where there were about 18 Democrats, including the new Arizona senator who voted against that, or wouldn't sign on to voting in favor of it. These are all things that when I see Democrats revolting against ideas that are popular and also supported by most members of the caucus, and then the leader, Pelosi, who does nothing to them, I question the effectiveness of that person. And then I realize, oh wait, she's very effective. She's over here spearheading Paygo so they can never do any of the stuff that people actually want, like a Green New Deal. So she's very good when it comes to killing anything that liberals or progressives want. But if it's a Republican idea, she'll try to argue against it, but she won't actually stand up for it. So that's why when I sat here and I saw people who tried to say that, oh, when she met with Trump in the White House, she really showed him one and got him. It's like, what are you talking about? All she did was say, "I will not give you this." And he said, "No, yes, you will." And then she says, "I will not give you this," and just goes back and forth. And they saw that as a meaning of strength. That's why I talk about a lot of these the tribalists, the people who support one side or the other, the Democrats or Republicans. It's a bunch of empty suits. Because when I was talking about how I spoke to a Trump supporter, and I told them that I didn't approve of his foreign policy because it was Obama's, where you bomb 7 countries. That person told me that I was not realistic about the world, that they're over there fighting so the terrorists won't get to us. All of this, in military industrial complex bootlicking. But when Trump pulls out of Syria, and I give him credit for that, they try to get along with me and go, "Yeah, man, see that Trump was with you the whole time." And then, Lindsey Graham, a guy that back in October was Chant was seen as just this wonderful man by Trump supporters because he gave this impassioned speech in defense of Kavanaugh. When he comes out and says, basically Trump pulling out of Syria is not wise and gives this whole press conference, they turn on him in 2 seconds. But that's not because they didn't agree. They had a serious position that, stayed with them, and it was always different from his. As long as he had Trump's position, whatever it was, they were going to back him. When he didn't, or no longer was bootlicking for their guy, thrown out like yesterday's newspaper. And it's the same thing with the people who are supporting a Pelosi. I have yet to see a single Pelosi supporter, whether it's someone on the talk shows, someone on Twitter, wherever the hell, actually name a policy other than Obamacare that they would give her credit for helping to pass. Because she hasn't done anything. She's been the leader since, I believe, 2003. And the only thing you can take credit for is passing one law and now screwing over the progressives that are supposedly on your side. So that's why with the Justice Democrats as a group, I think are too ineffective because they're infiltrated by people that are, probably empty suits as well. Told you there's a video of Ayanna Pressley who, was supposed to be this big deal because she was from Massachusetts and beat this incumbent member of the House, where she endorsed Hillary and was, talking about great and wonderful she was 2 years ago. And I'm supposed to now believe that this person has had this metamorphosis to where they're now in favor of all the stuff that the person that she, talked or rather did not support was in favor of. That this has just been the case. In these 600 days, she's completely transformed. No, I don't buy that. So that's why when I see her vote for Paygo or otherwise not speak out against it, like Ro Khanna and Tulsi Gabbard and Ocasio-Cortez, I know that this person's an empty suit. And I don't care what label they have next to them. But it is frustrating that they're one of few people in their position as members of the supposed progressive takeover group, and they're not doing anything. They're literally she was as effective to stopping that thing as I would have been sitting here in my room complaining about it. She didn't do a single thing. A sitting member of the House just sits quiet, put like you have tape over your mouth. And then we see her colleagues who do the opposite. So we don't buy it. This idea that this person couldn't have done anything, which is something that supporters of various politicians will try to say, oh, what could that person have done? What could that person have done? They always ask the person who has no power to not expect anything of the people with power. It's like, no, you're one of the most, was it like 435 members of the House? You're one of the members of the House, which means you can vote for or against anything that comes up within the entire chamber. And one of the few things you don't oppose is detrimental to everything else you want to do, or at least everything else you ran is wanting to do. Because like I said, I don't buy that she really believes it. But I'm focusing on that one in particular because she is the clearest example of having evidence which supports the idea that she just joined that group to get in office. And I hope that if she continues doing this stuff, she gets primaried out and we get somebody that's actually in favor of those ideas she ran on. So thank you for watching. Paygo is, a nightmarish piece of legislation. It was something that Republicans never passed. And another one of those things I've explained, which is that, the Democrats trick you into thinking they're your friends if you're a progressive with this vote blue to save America nonsense. Then they get in there and they screw you over. Just like you expected the Republicans to do, but you're taken aback because your own team is stabbing you in the back. I use back twice, a little redundancy, but you get the point. So thank you.